And this came up from the events on Friday. Kalonzo gets back security detail. The move signals closer working relations between Wiper leader and the president. And of course, you recall that on Friday, during the funeral of Kalonzo Musyoka's funeral, what did I say? During the funeral,
Kalonzo Musyoka dad's funeral.
Yes. During the funeral of Kalonzo Musyoka's father, Kalonzo Musyoka indicated that he will be working with the president and no one will take away that. He actually indicated that his children are the children of the president. And this has been criticized, by the way, by especially Governor of Makueni, Professor Kivutha Kibwana, and the Senator for Makueni, Mutula Kilonzo Jr., indicating that first, there was no consultation within the party on taking such a stance, and they feel that they feel cheated because when Kalonzo pledges his support for the president and says that atakuwa kijana wa mkono wa rais, then it becomes an issue. I don't know if they have that clip. Just before we get into this, let's just listen to that clip.
Kwa vile mzee ameunganisha sisi zote hapa, mimi kutoka leo mbele ya umati huu na hawa watumishi wa Mwenyezi Mungu ambao ni mashahidi wote. They are not even all Baptist church kama Pastor Kasuku, who looked after the spiritual well-being of my father. Naomba nitangaze kwamba kutoka leo kusitokee mtu anitenganishe mimi na ndugu yangu Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Watoto wangu na watoto wako na wako hapa. Utanisaidia hii familia mzee amewacha kubwa. Sikujua William pia alikuwa na watu wengi namna hii. Kwa hivyo mimi I think nitakuwa mtu wa mkono wa Uhuru kuanzia sasa. Na mtu asiniulize maswali. Ukiniuliza utaniona, utajua mimi ni mang'aa kama baba yangu.
So hataki maswali, lakini maswali tutauliza. I see that now he has been the security detail has been reinstated. Anthony Loch, what's happening?
Well, let me say that first of all, on the issue of security, I think it's unfortunate that a national leader of Kalonzo's stature has to publicly have to say that, you know, I am now working with the president for him to be able to be entitled to his security. You remember that at the heat of the contested presidential election last year, in order to try and intimidate and harass His Excellency Raila and Kalonzo and the rest, they withdrew their security. And I think this is unfortunate. This is an entitlement. As a former vice president, as former prime minister, these things are captured in a statute. The retirement of the vice president, prime minister, it is in a statute, and the matter is actually pending before a court of law, a case that I filed on behalf of His Excellency Raila and Kalonzo, on the question as to whether they are entitled to their retirement benefits and their security. And at that particular time, and Chris, you were in Parliament then, they brought in an amendment and said that in order to reap the benefits of this, you have to quit public politics. And I think that was contrary to the Constitution, and I don't want to go to it. The matter is pending judgment before court on the issue of security. On the issue as to whether Kalonzo should work with the president, I want to look at it in a much wider context. And if you see what the president said at page 8, that I'm grateful that AU gave Raila a job. And then he says, my brother Kalonzo should also help us. The way the president spoke about it, he was not thinking about Kalonzo as an errands boy. I think the bigger question here for us nationally, and in terms of a debate we must now engage in, is an interrogation of our presidential system and where it has worked or it hasn't worked. This winner take it all thing that if you run for president, you have no space in government. And that is why some people have been saying, let us shift this and go back to the prime minister's system, where if Kalonzo wasn't, he didn't make it to be president or Raila, there is a position of official opposition leader. They can lead their troops from inside. In the US, once a senator, you're always a senator. You run for president, If you lose the presidency, you do not lose your seat as Senate. This is a conversation that needs to be looked at outside the context. I think maybe in terms of the language, he said, Mimi mtu wa mkono. I don't think he really meant he wants to be mtu wa mkono. That I agree with the Wiper leaders. The stature of the person who wants to be next president, certainly it would demean him and his followers and the side of the coalition where we were if he were to be mtu wa mkono. What I'm thinking more about is if there was a role he could play with all the experience that he has in the and there are many conflicts, some still in Africa, some in other parts of the world. So I want us to look at these be out of government, whether they win the presidential election or they don't. Are we entitled to security only because we support government? I think that is a conversation. I don't want myself to go into the nitty-gritties as to whether he actually wanted to be a spanner boy. I don't think he meant that. And certainly I don't think the president intended to give him that kind of job.
Dr. Wamalwa, some of the Wiper leaders, they're already complaining. Professor Kivuta Kibwana, Mutule Kalonzo Jr., and former Senator, former Chakos Johnston Muthama, who says that there will be need for Musyoka to really clarify what he meant with that. And itakuwa mtu wa mkono wa rais, not will come in between. But I'm also, as I ask you that, I'm also asking, does this leave the Wiper family and the NASA family sort of orphaned in terms of you had your ideals as an opposition and you need to stick together to pursue that agenda? Now Raila Odinga is at the AU. There's the handshake working with the government. This is Kalonzo Musyoka pledging his support for the president. Mudavadi, we don't know. Senator Wetangula, we don't know. Where does that leave your coalition?
Thank you. Just to let you know that on that very day, actually, I was in Seikuru. And we were in the same chopper with Muthama. And when we were getting back, we were actually reflecting on that statement of Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka. Kalonzo Musyoka is a party leader of Wiper and is the deputy leader of NASA, a coalition that we belong to. So anything he says, it must be well understood.
Right.
Otherwise, it might send wrong signals. Because as NASA, we say we are the alternative government to Jubilee. And that statement, when he mentioned that he wants to announce officially, initially I thought he was going to say, I'm going to be on the ballot paper and I'm requesting Your Excellency the President to support me. Initially that's what I thought. But now when he came out with the issue of I'm going to be an errand boy, first we need to understand the context. So really, Muthama, Mutula Kalonzo Jr. and Professor Kibwana, of course they have a right to ask their party leader what he meant. You know you're a party leader of a Wiper and you want to take over leadership of this country. And when he speaks, the assumption is he's speaking on behalf of the party that he leads. So they have a right to ask, what has happened? Have you thrown in the towel? What's happening? And in this case, you know very well that President Uhuru is not going to contest in 2022. So really, it needs some clarification. We must understand the context he was coming in. Because here, of course, Kalonzo Musyoka cannot be an errand boy. And what Mheshimiwa Loch has just mentioned, he has very good skills, the diplomatic skills, the conflict resolution. Maybe it was a good way of asking His Excellency the President, please give me a job in terms of conflict resolution. So I want to help you in this other part. Let me be your advice on this matter. The same way our party leader, Raila Odinga, he's showing he's an engineer. So he has his expertise when it comes to matters of infrastructure. So to me, I can interpret it that way. But these other leaders from Wiper, they have a right. Because really, you can't expect Kalonzo Musyoka having been a vice president. I know William Ruto has used this term, that means mtu wa mkono president. But that's on a light note. I mean, he's not. We all know that. So really, I'm calling upon the Wiper leaders.
But he is the principal assistant.
Absolutely, but you are not mtu wa mkono. You know, mtu wa mkono, you're a spanner boy. When you are asked to jump, you don't even ask... you don't ask why am I jumping. Yours is to ask how high do I jump. And obviously you can't expect Kalonzo Musyoka to do that. So really we must understand the context in which he was referring to. To me, I think one, he was saluting the handshake. That here we support the handshake that was started by Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta. And he said it, that now the handshake has been devolved up to Saikuru. That's what he said. And in other words, he also wants to get a job, because he's seeing here the courtesy of the president. We are having Raila Odinga has an AU job. So even him, because of which I know he enjoys these things of conflict resolution. He is passionate about it. So Mutu wa Mkono, it was maybe a soft way of telling the president, here I'm idling, and if you give me an extra job of conflict resolution, he can add value in that. But I don't think he was saying Spanner Boy the way in the context of in our political circles, because there's no way he can be able to leave his party and join Jubilee, because those are the questions they were asking. Okay. And he mentioned this, that I don't want anyone to come between us. So that message we've been interpreting, maybe it was referring to his wiper team, that please leave us alone.
Before you go to the next topic.
Anthony Loch, is this a fair assessment of the sentiments of Kalonzo Musyoka? Is it a fair assessment that he's looking for a job, just like Raila Odinga?
No,
for a job?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that's an unfair comment on the former vice president. My understanding of the statement he made, that let nobody now come in between us, please remember that this is also in the context of the wider issue of the handshake. So that I think, and the conversation has always been about how we arrived at the handshake, him being the deputy party leader. There has been that quiet tension about the inclusivity issue. So I think he was easing himself onto that platform and saying there should have been nothing really that was coming in between us. We are part of that handshake. Raila and myself are like the same part of the different parts of the coin. So I think he was just announcing his arrival at the handshake and this all-inclusive unity thing that has been initiated by the two excellencies, Raila and Uhuru. So I think it would be an unfair assessment when he says, and I think the same argument you've used of Ruto when he says Mtu wa Mkono, let's also give His Excellency Kalonzo the benefit of the doubt that he said it in a light note. I think context was that there is this handshake, there is an artificial thing that was brought in between, that quote unquote we were excluded from the handshake. Now I don't want this thing to be there anymore. But there is another issue that you brought in which we haven't addressed. What happens to the coalition with these quote unquote inclusion, so to speak? I don't think that His Excellency Raila has been included in government. I think he has a role to play as a professional engineer. It doubles up. And please remember, Raila Odinga also has his own diplomatic skills. He's a politician par excellence. He's a professional engineer. And also he has brokered and been engaged in Ivory Coast and other places in Sudan in terms of conflict resolution. So if AU was looking for one person that may be able to do all these things in one, because it will be a job that requires diplomacy, requires a politician, and also a professional engineer. So he's arriving there in a professional capacity to try and help Africa, and I don't think it's a presidential appointment. But what happens now if Kalonzo as well gets into this, and I hope his will not be a presidential appointment, but a professional, something that he does in the mold of Kofi Annan. But care must be taken, like you said, so that we don't seem to have killed the opposition and the position and the platforms that we occupied. Because in spite of the handshake, we don't gel 100% in terms of philosophy, ideology, and the platforms that we ran in the last general election, which we must retain that little space where we continue to play that role. How that works out is something a bit intricate and complicated that the two people must tell us how it will work. Lastly, I've always occupied the position that the coalition government of 2007 might have been part of the undoing of our presidential candidate when it came to 2013, because then it meant that Raila could not play his role as the robust person who criticized. He had to be laid back, and then all the blames of government, because Kibaki was exiting, were then now visited on him as quote-unquote the incumbent. So I would like that our two principals, Kalonzo and Raila, takes this into account, and I know if they are going to be in the ballot, and they will be, that they take care that we do not get too involved into Jubilee, that we become like the person taking over their failings.
Right.
When we come to 2022, we want to be able to come in on a clean slate, that we have the same platform, same philosophy, and the things that we need to sell to the people of Kenya.
I wish you had more time to discuss this topic, but I had asked you a question of we don't know where your party leader is.
If you could allow me,
do you have a short answer?
Yeah, if you could allow me, my party leader is strongly in NASA. And I had mentioned this before. When you go to the register of political parties, there's a document that shows who are the owners of NASA. NASA is a coalition of parties.
Owners or founders or members?
Yeah.
Are they owners?
Yeah, of course, we are the owners. We are the founders. So we have Ford Kenya is there, ODM is there, NASA is there, Wiper is there. And when you come to Parliament, NASA exists. For instance, I'm the deputy whip of NASA, courtesy of being the chief whip of Ford Kenya. So Senator Wetangula,
what does all these
Senator Wetangula is family, and he knows very well legally where in NASA. And when you mentioned that where is he in terms of jobs, he doesn't need a job because he's a senator. He's busy. He's a senator right now. He's still in the U.S. on a parliamentary committee on the Senate. So coming to maybe Mheshimiwa Musalia Mudavadi, Mudavadi is playing a very critical role as far as oversighting the government is concerned. And at the funeral, he asked the president some two fundamental questions. He told the president, please, can you save us on public debt? We know very well in this country we've overborrowed. And that's why our state corporations, some are supposed to be, I don't know, auctioned. So he asked the president about that question, which was actually very critical. And the president answered. He tried and answered it very well. But what we know is that the public debt is beyond. The rule of thumb is when you borrow, you should not go beyond the 50% of the GDP. The borrowing in this country, we're almost at 60%. We're actually struggling to service our debts. So to me, Musalia Mudavadi asked a very valid question. And he also talked about the issue of corruption. Those were two critical things.
Okay, Dr. Chris, we now have to take a short break so that we talk to Kimani Mbugwa. You can text us your views on 22422. You can tweet us at Citizen TV Kenya. The hashtag to use is Daybreak. And someone here, Moses Obiero of KU, says, no, not that one. Every ministry, someone says that every ministry has some security concerns. So is Matiang'i going to supervise them all?